Welcome to the Stokecast, where each week we bring you an inspiring athlete, adventurer, or entrepreneur and dig into their stories and strategies for balancing work, life, and adventure while having fun and making a difference. I'm Jonathan Ronzio.
And I'm Emily Holland. Thanks for joining us today.
Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Stokecast today. This is episode 5 with Caroline Gleich.
5 already.
This is crazy. It's crazy. If you don't know Caroline, well, you get to know her a lot actually during our interview, but she's a pro ski mountaineer. Pretty rad lady who deals with a lot of different things because she really puts herself out there on social media and in the mountains, really.
Yeah, Caroline is an absolute badass. She is a really talented skier, a impressive ski mountaineer, and also an environmental activist, and she's absolutely a big influencer for our industry on social media. If you haven't seen her film Follow Through, it documents Caroline's story of skiing every line in the infamous shooting gallery in the Wasatch Range. And we actually watched that at the Night of Stoke out in the Backcountry Film Festival at Winter OR.
Yeah, it was epic. I remember, I maybe say this in the interview, but I was like, I've seen this before, but I want to see how everyone else's reactions to it. And the crowd went crazy. Like, people were freaking out about some of the lines that she skied and were freaking out about some of the stuff that is shared in that film, and she shares a lot of that and more with the interview today. Yeah, it's a really cool film. Recommend you check it out. We will chat about that a little bit in her interview, and as Emily said, you'll learn a lot more about Caroline. But the topic really that came out of this one is digging into how Caroline Gleich pushes past fear and learns to dismiss criticism and critics, whether internal or external. So this is a good one. Thanks for spending time with us today, and I know you're gonna get a lot out of this. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to the Stokecast. This is Jonathan Ronzio. I'm here with Emily Holland.
And we are talking to professional ski mountaineer, adventurer, social and environmental activist Caroline Gleich today. Who her mission is just to basically inspire people to get outside, live healthy, active lifestyles, and protect the places we play. And we're absolutely, this is hard for me to not say stoked to, I try not to overuse the title of the podcast, but we are certainly stoked to talk to you today.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here.
So much stoke. I love it.
Well, thanks for joining us. What's happening? Where are you this evening?
I am in Park City, Utah. I'm at home, and I'm excited to put down a good block of training over the next couple of weeks. And I don't have too much travel lined up, so I'm just kind of excited to have some chill time with long runs on the trails and long bike rides, and just continue to increase my fitness.
That's great. So is there anything specific that you're training for, or just generally, keeping up the base?
Well, one of my big summer goals, I've always wanted to run an ultramarathon. So I feel like a lot of people want to do that. And I'm being a skier. I have, I don't have knee problems, like surgery problems, but skiers, we put a lot of wear and tear on our knees. So there was a long period of my life where running wasn't really available to me because I was just pretty beat up by the summer. But I've been able to kind of get my body back to a place where it feels really good to run, and so I'm really excited to be able to run. I signed up for a really weird distance of a race. It's a 62-kilometer race.
Very specific. I like it.
It's a beautiful loop through the mountains here in Park City, so it'll be about 40 miles.
Awesome. Awesome. And it's an ultra trail marathon, so you're doing all running. I've seen you doing some biking training too. Is it a duath?
No, I signed up for this bike race that's 2 weeks after the running race, and that race is 70 miles of gravel, and it's like 40% road and 60% gravel, but it's called the Crusher and the Tushers, and it's like supposed to be a really difficult race. So I have that 2 weeks after my running race.
So let's backtrack a little to, like, I mean, a general everyday adventurer might be looking at running a 62 kilometer race or a 40-mile race if they're that specific about it, and then thinking they need a lot of time off between the next thing, and you're going right into a 70-mile bike ride, like 2 weeks later. How do you get to the point where you're even considering doing those things back to back? Like, what's your schedule like to be able to train yourself to have that sort of base of fitness to consider these things?
Well, I don't know if I have the base of fitness that is going to be needed. And so I guess one of the things, kind of a mindset that I like to have, well, I like it, and right now I dislike it, because I like to always kind of have a new challenge and push myself to do something I haven't done. But it also means I have to be like a beginner again at something. And so training for this bike race and training for this, like, I'm not a professional runner or a professional biker. And so it's really humbling for me to see my times compared to people who do this all the time. But at the same time, I think it's a really good way to overcome mental and physical plateaus, because by putting yourself in that mindset of the beginner and of a student and learning, you're able to really gain some new understanding and increase your fitness. And I just think it's kind of a mindset that helps you grow. And so I kind of hate it right now, because I'm like, I want to be doing the thing I'm really good at, where I could be getting, like, I'm on Strava and I'm kind of obsessed with, like, collecting the trophies when you have the fastest times on segments.
Oh my God, it's so addicting. They have gamified training, and it's such a cool way.
Awesome.
Yeah, but when I'm doing my workouts on my bike and on my feet on running, I'm just not at the top level, and it's so frustrating sometimes. So it's good, though. It's good to have that humility, and I think that those long runs and the long bike rides, that sort of mindless activity for me has been really therapeutic and healing in overcoming, like, just a lot of the personal struggles and professional challenges that I've had. And so there's just something that's very calming about, like, the long repetitive motion of running and biking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty consistent. It feels almost like you're in like a dream, kind of. You're like in this other world, especially when you get to that runner's high level, and you're just like, is this real life? I don't know that it is, but you have really good reflection time during those moments.
Yeah, and with an ultra, you go from runner's high to runner's overdose very
runner's
fast.
suffer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line there for sure. But I do find that time for me on the trail is really good to develop, like, the mental resiliency that I need to tackle some of the bigger challenges in my career and with other things. And so it's important for me to have that. And also, the other thing about these sports is that because I'm not, like, a sponsored athlete for them, it takes a little bit of the pressure off in a weird way. So it gives me sort of, this is like my off season.
Right. This could be maybe more fun time for Caroline, less work seeming time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's nice to have something where I don't have, like, sponsor expectations or too much pressure. And yeah. And also I love the community dynamic of racing, of race day. It's just so much fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you feel doing a bike race or an ultramarathon benefits your ski career? Like, you mentioned how it can help you mentally overcome some of the challenges personally and professionally. Like, do you want to call attention to anything? I don't know how deep you want to get with those challenges, but...
Well, I mean, one of the big things I guess one thing with ski mountaineering is I had a really great coach a few years ago. His name is Scott Johnston. He actually wrote a really good book with Steve House called Training for the New Alpinism.
I have that on my shelf.
It's such a good book. So he coached me for, like, maybe 9 months or so. And he really hammered into me, like, the importance of cross training and not spending all my time in the mountains, where it's pretty dangerous. Like, ski mountaineering is dangerous, and there's a lot of risks involved in it, and it's not the thing that you can do every day of your life like you can with running. And so it's important to kind of, like, know that there's a time and a place to put yourself in the mountains and to put yourself in harm's way. And then there's a time to not do that. And so it's helped me, I guess, like, with the running and stuff, it just gives me a better balance of, I can still really push my fitness and create gains that will help with ski mountaineering. But I don't have to be in the snow and the cold and trying to plan routes that don't have avalanche risk. So it's nice to have that for sure.
Isn't it interesting that we see more and more, like, you are a professional skier, ski mountaineer, but probably the majority of your daily life is not doing that thing. Or like somebody might be a professional skier, or I mean a professional speaker, and the majority of their life is not on stage speaking.
We're seeing a lot more crossover into other skills being honed in different ways, like not just doing that one thing and that like singular focus.
Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of adrenal fatigue of putting yourself in those high adrenaline situations. And so if you're constantly doing that, it's so draining and it can really cause a lot of problems in the long run. And so I've definitely been at that place where I thought I needed to be in the Alpine all summer long, trying to do more Alpine climbing. And it's a fast track to burnout, I think, in my opinion. So it's just, I mean, talking about like balance, I think is overrated, because I think I'm pretty intense. I get pretty obsessed with things. So it's more like going from one obsession to another obsession. And then doing I do some like Netflix binging in between when I need to totally relax.
Yeah, and so that kind of drive, I mean, of course, we all need the Netflix, like maybe one day a month, or wait one day every 6 weeks to just be like, okay, no one talked to me today. My covers are over my head and I'm just here by myself. Yeah. But I mean, obviously being a pro athlete, you have a certain level of intrinsic motivation to do that thing. So do you think you've always had that, or what has cultivated that intrinsic drive for you to like keep pushing and accomplish all these incredible goals that you have so far?
Well, actually, I grew up in Minnesota, and my parents really pushed me to take piano lessons and to play in like musical instruments and to learn foreign languages. And so I didn't grow up doing sports like I do now. I always really wanted to, but I think that almost not doing it as a kid helped me have that drive as an adult. Because by the time I was 18, I knew 100% I wanted to try to be a pro skier, and I had this like unquenchable hunger and thirst to try to make it happen. And I think that actually helped me a lot, because instead of my parents pushing me to do it, it was something that I chose as an adult. So, so I haven't always, like, I wasn't like this as a child. I was more disinterested in life. But I mean, I think it's just like that curiosity and passion. And yeah, I guess, yeah.
Well, someone with that just insatiable, innate drive to experience new things or push yourself into new challenges, like, and just continue, go to the next thing, the next obsession. Do you find it hard to actually give yourself permission to relax? Like when you're sitting there on the couch, like Emily was just describing, like watching Netflix and under the covers, or what, do you feel like you should be doing something else?
I mean, I've gotten better at that mentally as I've gotten older, because I think that it was more of a struggle for me. It's still something I struggle with at times. I mean, I think we all do. And I'm really hard on myself, and I do get like kind of intense FOMO, or I can be pretty hard on myself. And so I just have to keep reminding myself that I'm not a failure. I guess I have to tell myself that all the time. I constantly feel like inadequate or like a failure. So, yeah, I don't have the best answer for that question, because it's like a lifelong journey of accepting yourself.
Totally. That's okay. Now, I mean, you have been very public about critics and criticism, whether that was from yourself, like you're just talking now, or externally. Like how do you deal with and dismiss criticism or self-doubt?
Well, I mean, I have had a lot of that throughout my career, where I feel at every turn my accomplishments, or I feel that I've been questioned, I guess, about the legitimacy of my accomplishments, or just my place in the mountains. And so I guess it's a lot easier now that I'm able to talk about it freely, because for so long I wasn't talking about it like I am. And so finding my voice with that has really helped make it a lot easier, definitely.
Was that kind of always a thing? You know, even before you had the platform you do today, was the questioning of your pursuits always prevalent?
Yeah, I mean, I had like my first kind of weird cyber stalker thing, cyber bully in 2009. So,
Oh
I
my
mean, it's been
gosh.
almost a decade long battle with this. And so, I mean, there's a lot of it that I've been able to try to work like online and to get it removed or to address it that way. But then there's a lot of it that's just rumors that go on that affect my reputation and my ability to get jobs. And so it's really frustrating. And I guess I feel more liberated now that I can speak freely about it and address them head on, because for so long I didn't have the confidence or the platform or the reputation and the social standing to be able to take a stance and to address it. And so it's exhausting for sure. I mean, sometimes I get really tired of it, and I just wish that I had been born into a different body or a different, I don't know, like sometimes I'm like, what did I do? Like what's wrong with me? Like why do I keep coming up against these challenges? But then on the other hand, I when I get like letters from people who are like today I got a letter from an orthopedic surgeon who's a woman, and she said a lot of the things I described in this like latest blog post and Outside Magazine article I wrote. She said she experiences the same things, and seeing that I'm talking about it has given her the courage to talk about it in her field of work. And so just getting that letter alone, it gives me total goosebumps, and it makes me really excited that we might be able to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jonathan and I were actually just talking about this because we were thinking about how this transcends, like you just said, all industries, all jobs that people have. And I think it's incredible that you're putting your voice out there as much as you have in a really in really positive way, because I'm sure and we always obviously focus on a lot of the negativity that we're getting, but maybe there's certainly more positive actions that are coming from it as well. So I think that obviously that letter shows it, but I'm sure there's other stories and messages that you get. I'm certain that I saw something when I first started following your story, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's happened to me too. I'm glad that at least there's some sort of like camaraderie in this, that we can talk about it openly.
Yeah, for sure. I guess like when I first had some of these weird cyber stalker things too, I didn't really know that they were illegal and that they were crossing this line, because
Right.
there's a certain part of your brain that doesn't want to accept it as harassment, because you have these coping mechanisms that are built in that want you to just go along with things and not question the status quo. So I would come up with all these mental things of like, oh, well, this just means that I've made it, or like this is just what happens to people that like once they reach, it means I'm successful, or I don't know. It's like people are tell me this is what happens when you put yourself out there, like you deserve this. And so I would kind of blame myself, and then it was like a great wake up call one day. I actually had a friend who called out her cyber harasser, who was like sending her all this hate speech on Snapchat, and seeing her call her person out made me realize, like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, I need to call my person out and like speak about this. And so it does have a good trickle effect in that like people who are experiencing this, even if they don't know who the person is, just being able to talk about it and know that someone else is going through it makes you feel so much less alone and so much better mentally.
Yeah.
So are you able to really lean into the positivity that, like the letter you received today, or does it really get to you when you see a negative comment? I mean, like personally, I have a film on YouTube that like probably 80% of the comments are really just amazing things that really touch me, but then 20% are just people that just have nothing better to do than tear you down, and it's like you can't help but let that sting you harder than the positive comments resonate sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I read somewhere it takes 10 positive affirmations to overcome one negative one. And so, I mean, the things that people say, the negatives, they totally do, you can't unhear them or unread them. Like, once you've seen those things, there's no way to undo it. There's no, like, back button or delete. Like, it's in your psyche, and it becomes part of you in a really harmful and destructive way. And I don't have all the answers to that, except that, yeah, I have to purposefully, like, really focus on the positive. And I keep, like, a Google Doc with really nice things that people have wrote me, so I can reflect back on that.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
And go back to that, because those things that you don't want to hear, they come up in the other thing that makes me really sad about them is that their intent is to silence people's voices. And when that works, I mean, I know for me that there's so many things that I've wanted to write about that I haven't, because I've been worried about the negative things that people are going to say. And that's the part that makes me really sad, is just I have to push myself to overcome that fear of what people are going to say, and to keep speaking my truth, because their whole goal is to get you to be silent. And so if you be silent, like, you're letting them succeed. And I guess it's just a constant struggle, and I don't have any good answers for you except the Google Doc with the positives.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually did that at my last job. I had, like, a folder in my email of, like, okay, these are all the times, like, people said I was doing a good job, and mostly for my performance review, but also for my ego and for, like, my heart to feel a little bit better. But that kind of goes into what I wanted to ask you about. And when you put yourself out there in the way, it seems, I don't have the platform that you do, but it seems like it would be really scary. You're putting yourself in a really vulnerable position, and that directly and very literally correlates to what you do in your professional life, which is put yourself in potentially vulnerable situations. And what I really liked in Follow Through, your film that came out this year, is the voiceover that you have in many of the soon-to-be lines that you ski down, which is you talking to yourself, you got this, you've skied all these lines, you've done this, you've got this, girl. And you're, like, talking yourself through it. So how, is that how you usually get through things that you're afraid to do or that you're worried about? Is it self-talk? Is it, do you do meditative practices? How do you usually overcome those?
Well, I didn't really know that I did that self-talk until the film came out, because
that's amazing.
I, like, would sing to myself sometimes, and there's this song I would sing called Fuzzy Fuzzy Cute Cute, and it's a YouTube video of, like, baby animals, and so I would sing that sometimes.
Positive thoughts. Yeah.
I didn't know that I did that until like, we pulled all the audio together, and like, it was not something I did really intentionally. I think it was more a coping mechanism, a coping strategy that was sort of unconscious. And I think at a certain point, you do have to be your own cheerleader, and you have to be, like, the parent you never had, who's there, like, cheering for you and who's really invested in your success. And so I do some meditation, and then I also keep, like, a success journal where I write the things that I'm most stoked about, because it's also really hard not to compare yourself to other people and what I do. Yeah. And I'm always feeling like I'm coming up short and I'm inadequate, and I'm like, if only I could get to the next level. And I think that's just part of, like, our training of capitalism, and it's just, like, our consumeristic society that is always wanting more and more and more. And so I guess the meditation has helped, and the success journal, and I do yoga sometimes, and running, and I don't know. I mean, it's always a struggle. I definitely go through some dark, like, I definitely have, like, a dark side where I'm not always the most happy person, and so it is a struggle for me sometimes.
Now, what do you do for meditation?
I use I'm not, like, this is not a sponsored ad or anything, but I use Headspace, the app, and I just, like, randomly found it, and I got really into it last summer. and I meditated I got obsessed with Headspace, and I meditated 1,000 minutes.
Isn't that gamified too? Don't you feel like, isn't it like you get a little badge once you got into 100 days?
You get 10 days, and so I use
Yes,
that too,
and
actually.
I felt like that was totally defeating the purpose of meditation, but I just did it anyway. And the other thing that has been really helpful is, I had a lot of life coaches throughout the years, and I think that a lot of ski mountaineers and people who are driven to this kind of stuff in the mountains, that are driven to risk, it's I think a lot of us struggle with mental health and with addiction and with these other things, because it's the same kind of brain wiring that drives you to seek out these kinds of thrills. And so one of the most powerful healer people in my life has been my massage therapist. And so by the work I've done on the massage table, she's helped me really uncover a lot of the blocked places where I have stored trauma or dark things that have happened in my life that I can't even really access on a talking level. They're so deep in my tissues, and I've built up so much muscle and fascia around them, that the only way is through structural integration, this kind of massage work. And so that my massage therapist, her name is Jessa at Rocksteady Bodyworks. If you're ever in Utah, I highly recommend her.
Nice.
That's helped me to really overcome a lot of my these blocked areas in my life, and to deal with the kind of repressed traumas that a lot of us have.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not something that we hear a ton of. We hear about going outdoors being really, therapeutic. That's a constant thread in a lot of things you read or you see in the outdoor community. But we don't really talk about what if you need more than just that, and also
outdoors as an addiction.
Right, maybe it's outdoors, but there's a portion of. There not everything can be fixed by going on a nature walk. You need to dive into some of your deeper issues. So, what is it about going outdoors, or maybe pro athletes that do you think I don't know, there's extra room to explore that maybe mental health area, because you really don't hear about that from the pro athlete community within the mountain sports.
Well, it's just, it's sexism or implicit bias or any of these things. It's really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be the poster person of, you don't want to be the sexual harassment girl or the cyber bully. It just sucks to be that person kind of. But at the same time, I think that I would like to see more honest and open communication about these sort of things, because I think it's something a lot of us are struggling with. And I don't think, after my friend Liz, one of my close friends, was killed in an avalanche 3 years ago. And the last thing I wanted to do after she died was to go into the alpine, into avalanche terrain. That was not healing for me at all. And I tried to make that healing and to make it a thing, and it just created more trauma for me. It was a bad cycle of despair and depression. And so I think that it would be helpful to, as a community, to figure out other ways. One thing that helped me a lot too, this sounds really silly, was playing my ukulele. And
I don't think that sounds silly at all.
About the music and the singing and the vibration and the humming and everything, that it helped my brain find a new wavelength and a new pattern and get out of that sort of downward spiral of despair and depression. So and the massage has really helped me, because it's just, some of us, we're so guarded, we're so hard, we try so hard to be these tough people, that there's not any talk therapy that can really get through. So that's why the massage and that deep structural work really helped.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds but between skiing and your drive in the alpine, between the ultramarathons and the biking, and then and writing and massage and music and yoga and headspace and all this stuff, there are so many different aspects of your life. How do you how do you structure it all? How do you organize your thoughts and your motives?
Well, I could really use some help with that, actually. So if you know anyone who could be a good manager, no, I'm just
I'll
kidding.
send over my resume after this, Caroline. We can hook that up.
No, I mean, it's something that I struggle with all these things. I feel so bad. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to have this expert voice or something, and I'm like, I don't have
this is the realness.
I don't know. I tell myself, I feel like when I was growing up, my parents are like workaholics, and I love them, but I've accepted that about them. And so I don't want to be the kind of person who's busy, like out of a disease of addiction to work. So I try to just to take life in strides and to work on the things that need, like, to put out the fires when they need to be put out, and to tell myself that things will get done when they need to get done. Because in the line of work that I do, there's not often a clear timeline for all the projects that I want to do. Like, I always have more ideas and more projects than I could ever have time for. So it's a matter of putting everything into place, and the timing of everything is really important. And so just sort of using my intuition, and then trying to put the right things, the pieces of the puzzle, into place when it's right.
No, I think that's right. I think it's smart. I mean, I happened across a notebook a couple days ago that I was flipping through some pages that were probably 6 months old, and saw some of my to-do lists and realized there was, like, a third of the page wasn't crossed off. And I was like, oh, I remember when I wrote that to do, and had, thought in the moment I had to do that thing, and it looks like I never did it, and nothing ever happened, but I've done other stuff, right? Like, some of your to-dos you just don't have to get done, and the things you do need to do or want to do will work themselves out in terms of your priority.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I've learned with mountaineering, especially ski mountaineering, is that you can't force things sometimes. Like, your body can only handle a certain number of projects per year. And so you have to be strategic. So, because if you do too much in 1 year, you might burn yourself out or get injured or have some sort of sickness that sets you back. And so it's taken me a long time to figure out the right number of things, objectives per year, to set my season up and to set my life up for success.
So before you did figure that out, I mean, let's talk a little about you becoming the pro skier you are today, and the path that you walked to get there, and maybe where you overtaxed yourself or where it paid off to get you to where you are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I put in a lot of years of, I built my career by doing I had a blog for a long time, and I used to write a lot more on my blog. But then, I worked my way through college, and then it's really only in maybe like the past 5 or 6 years that my ski career has really taken off. And it was just, when I was first starting out, I guess I was really, I don't know if it was just my own self-imposed limitations. Like, I kind of wish I would have started doing more ambitious projects sooner. But at the same time, I felt that I needed to put down a good base and to understand the mountains and the snow, and to understand about, like, mountain sense and snow safety and all these different things. And so that took me, like, quite a few years of keeping it more local and just trying to spend a lot of time in the snow and learning how to be a really good skier and how to move in the mountains safely. So that was like a good decade. And then,
work.
As I got more confident, I started to pick more ambitious projects. And so, sometimes I think, like, oh, I should have done that sooner. It was that just like a lot of, I'm like a perfectionist. I think for a long time I was afraid to pick things where I might fail or look stupid, like, by trying something that was too hard. But I have less of an ego, and I tried to take off that, like, perfectionist part of me, and to try to pick things where I might fail, like this bike race that I'll be doing in a few weeks.
You won't fail. We'll be rooting for you, so you definitely won't fail.
I might not make the cutoff time. There's a good chance that I might get sent home.
Oh.
But that's okay. It's okay to try something that's, like, to bite off a little more than you can chew sometimes. So, yeah. And then, there was 1 year in 2005 where I just poured myself into my work, and I had just, like, trip after trip after trip, and I had been overtraining a lot, and I ended up just with this crazy fatigue after a ski mountaineering expedition to Peru. And I think I had some mild giardia or some sort of stomach problem. But my coach asked me to go get this blood test to test for ferritin, which is the stores of iron in your bone marrow. So it's different than being anemic. It's like you depleted your stores of iron on a really deep level. And so I had a really low ferritin level, and it took 6 months to get better. And I had to just like chill. It was so hard for 6 months. And so I realized like the consequences of overdoing it. And I think like in your life, in a race and then in your life, you only have a certain amount of matches in your matchbox. And so, I mean, I think humans are capable of so much more than we think, but at the same time, you have to be strategic how you use these matches and when you light a match, because there's certain matches that you'll never get back. So I just try to think like, I want to do this. I love my job so much, and I love being in the mountains, and I want to make this my job until I'm at least 65, and hopefully I can be doing it till I'm 85. So instead of trying to pick everything, like I have a long-term vision for myself of like running marathons and climbing mountains until I'm a little old lady.
I love that. I have a probably less ambitious but similar vision. But kind of going along that in knowing which matches to light, you know, we obviously people follow you on social media and they see you going into the mountains on a consistent basis, or seeing you doing the different lines in the shooting gallery, or whatever they see on all your adventures out there. And I mean, not often are you capturing the moment where you decide to turn back or you decide to make a really conservative decision. And oftentimes I assume you can't really pull your phone out in those decisions either. But I mean, how often does that happen? And what is your, I guess, level of risk taking in the mountains?
Well, it's gotten lower and lower as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
And I guess there's just, for me, it's like I'm a little more strategic about it than I used to be, where I want it to be going to something bigger. It's not that I feel I need to take a risk or to do something crazy every day or all the time.
Right.
But I had a good mentor early on in my career who was helping me with like a snow safety avalanche refresher before I went on a ski filming trip in the backcountry of Japan. And he told me like a good rule for when to go or when to turn around is like 3 strikes. So one of them could be like jet lag, or maybe you just feel a little bit off. And another could be weather related, or someone had some equipment problem. And so anytime you have 3 strikes, and you can just make one up if you want to, then you turn around, and the mountains, they'll always be there. So you can always go back another time. And so I try to use that as a decision-making tool a lot in my life. And I mean, it's really hard to know. And some of my dreams and goals really scare me. And so it's hard to deal with that anxiety sometimes. But then I always think I can just go and have a look, see how it feels, and I can always turn around. So you're never like, it's important not to like make that move that you can't reverse if you're not 100% sure. So I'm always just, I'm like probably a little more conservative than a lot of people would expect. So, yeah.
Now how do you, like, let's say you had your mind on a big objective for a long time, you were training for it, you were doing everything, putting all the planning and the prep together, and then, and it's a long expedition, and you finally get there, and then you have to turn back. Like, how much do you let that weigh on you, and or are you open about the fact, to your audience, to whether it's in a film or a post, that you didn't make it, you have to turn back?
Well, I mean, I thought I got really lucky when we did the filming for the shooting gallery project for Follow Through. I got really lucky we had the season that we did, because we had a huge snow year 2 winters ago. If we would have had the winter we had this year, then there's no way I would have finished the project. Like, it would have been impossible. And so I thought about that a lot with that project, because we had this timeline and we had some budget and these like sponsorship constraints. But I knew that even if I didn't finish it that season, that we'd still have a great story and a great film. So I tried to like really, I mean, I'm not going to say that I didn't feel the pressure that I needed to finish the project, But at the same time, there's certain conditions that you just can't work with in the mountains. And snow is not like rock, and it's not like trails. Like, it's real fickle. You need all the stars to align. Like, everything has to align. And more often than not, it doesn't. So I guess it's always an experience to learn how to walk away. And it's like one of these things that I continue to learn and to try to figure out the best way to navigate through.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about follow through. Obviously, you've done a lot of other skiing in your life, but most recently that was a big hit with REI coming out with that video. And wanted to talk about the process for that, because from your post on Outside earlier, I think it was just a couple days ago, right?
Yeah.
It seemed like you were really running that project, and I would love to hear about the process behind that and setting it up. And of course, that was your own objective, and then bringing in people that you trusted to do kind of the videography and all the work behind the scenes too. So what did that process look like for you?
Well, I started that project. It was sort of like a personal passion project that I started now 6 years ago.
Wow.
And it was like a way for me to just like start working on something on my own without sponsor pressure and without photographers. And so I started by skiing like there was 12 3-star lines, and the lines are all rated on a scale of 1 to 3 stars. 1, like 3 being the most classic, like the best must-do ones. So I started with that, and at that point, I couldn't see myself skiing all the lines in the book. It just didn't appear to be available to me. And so even when we started production of the film, I wasn't 100% sure that I would be able to finish it. And so the videographer who he's a photographer and a videographer, and I was out skiing with him one day, and I told him about I kind of kept it secretive for a while, because sometimes your goals, like, they're scary, and it's scary to talk about them, because if you do fail, then telling someone, they'll see you as a total failure, you think.
Totally.
So I didn't even, I'm superstitious. I used to be so superstitious where I wouldn't tell anybody anything because I thought I would jinx myself. But I told him I was working my way through this project, and he's like, that would be an awesome film. And so he started filming totally on spec. Like, we had no budget and we had no story. And I had also met that year with Duct Tape and Beer, because I absolutely loved their storytelling and their filmmaking. And I just knew I wanted to make a different kind of ski film that told a real human story. And I really wanted to tell the story of my half-brother and about my life and my journey, because my half-brother was such a big thing in my life, losing him in an avalanche when I was 15, and then skiing the line where he was killed 15 years later. And so it was just so, close to my heart that I knew I wanted to tell that story. But I just didn't know that it would all come together through the lens of this bigger project of the shooting gallery. So we started filming, and then we wrote a proposal, and we got Duct Tape. They were really stoked on it. And then they redid the proposal, and then they met with REI, and REI was really stoked on it. And then it just it fell into place, and it was a really great marriage or union of all these different teams working on it. So I'm so grateful how it came together in the end.
Well, yeah, it came together amazing. We caught it at Night of Stoke at Last OR, and it was just stunning. I came back from Denver and sat down in bed and pulled it up again and watched it with my wife. I was like, you got to check out this film.
I know. I remember being in that theater, and I think you were there, Caroline, right? At OR?
Yeah.
I remember being in that theater, and I had already watched it, and some of the guys that we were with hadn't seen it yet. And I was basically watching their expressions, because I don't ski, and I was like, you guys see this? This is crazy. This is crazy what she's doing. And I just remember all the reactions in the room. They were like, no, she's not going to do that line. No way. And then you drop in, and it's just incredible. My gosh, what a reaction. So did you feel that sort of love and reaction from that film? And especially with it being so, vulnerable and putting yourself out there in a different way, different medium. Did you feel, did that go in the success journal? Did you feel like that was a success?
Yes, no, and that event, especially showing it at Denver, that had a really big significance to me because it was a really great turnout in a big theater, and that was such a wonderful crowd. That was one of the highlights of all the film showings that I've had. And so, yeah, I'm really, really happy. I mean, I'd been wanting to make this film and to tell my story for so long like I'd wanted to make a film for so long. So it felt really gratifying to do it. And yeah, thank you for watching it, and thank you for taking your friends and showing it to your family, because it's really near and dear to my heart. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's an incredible story. So I'm
You.
sure you have the bug to continue to create. Do you have some ideas spinning in your head? I mean, you said that you in the past have not wanted to put things out there for fear of them not coming to fruition. Is that still a thing for you, or are you on the side of like put it in the world to create accountability and make it happen?
Well, I just go back and forth because my boyfriend right now, he has this big goal that he wants to do. He's training to swim the English Channel, and he also wants to, in the same year, climb Everest and ride his bike across America as this crazy triathlon. And
Sounds like a good year.
Prepare for Everest, he wants to go climb and ski Cho Oyu, which is the sixth highest peak in the world, this fall. And so I've really wanted to go to the Himalayas for a long time, and to climb and ski an 8,000-meter peak, it would be a great thing on my resume for my ski mountaineering. But at the same time, I'm just absolutely terrified of it because 8,000 meters is so dangerous to go to, like, the death. I mean, it's almost the death zone, and it's just there's so much objective hazard, and it's also really expensive. And so I'm just like at night, and also I haven't told my parents about it, so hopefully they don't listen to this before I talk to them. But I just like, it's when you see something you want to do and it's so scary, it just keeps me up at night, and my stomach is totally in knots. And so that's something that is maybe on the radar, but I still can't talk about it 100% because it's so scary to me. So, so
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
one of those things.
That's a big objective.
I'm not talking about that much, but now I am talking about it.
Oh no!
Have you done much high altitude in the past?
No, I feel woefully ill prepared for 8,000 meters because I have done some really, really fast ascents to 6,000. 6,000 meters is the highest I've been. So I climbed and skied the three highest peaks in Ecuador in a week. And so one of them is higher than Denali. And then I also did like a really quick smash and grab weekend to climb and ski Orizaba, which is the highest volcano in North America. It's 18,000 feet, I believe. So I've done a little bit of high altitude, but Himalayas is totally different. It's a whole different ball game.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm toying with, and again, it's just also like people are doing such more incredible things in the Himalayas that sometimes I feel like, is it a big enough goal? Like, is it going to cut through the noise, or how can I make it? How can I take people along in a creative and inspiring way? And so it's just all these things that keep me up at night that I have to make a decision about really soon here. So if I do decide to do it, you'll hear a lot more about it in the coming weeks and months.
Well, that's such a hard thing you just touched on is looking at what some people are doing in the Himalayas and comparing that to what you're thinking about doing. And while for you it might be something that does turn your stomach and keeps you up at night with both anticipation and excitement, but fear, but feeling like you're not enough. I mean, comparison can be the death of creativity.
Absolutely. And so it is, yeah, and then there's a part of me that is like, my partner supported me, and he skied a lot of the lines through my project with me. And so part of me wants to go and do it as to be supportive of him. And
right.
So I think that that's maybe where the story is, because I think that there is a beauty in celebrating partnership and knowing when you're going to be doing your mission, and then knowing when you're going to be supporting someone else. And I think for me, maybe an important next step for me to take is to not be like on my project, but to be helping someone else achieve their goal and helping to tell their story. So that could be a way I can grow and do something, see it differently. So we'll see. TBD.
Well, I'm excited to hear whatever you decide there.
Also, those goals of his are incredible too.
Yeah, that's no joke.
Rad guy.
I know.
Rad guy.
That's another thing that makes me feel inadequate. It's good though because it has a good like upward spiral on both of us. Like he's training hard, I'm training hard. We both want to go to bed early and get up early, and I feel like we are living a more healthy life than if we didn't have these goals. And so I think that there is something to be said for that too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's important to have a partner that truly understands what you're doing and can be part of them to certain degrees, but then also know that it is your own objective too, which is, I think that's great. It's super supportive.
So when you have a big expedition or a plan like that, an objective on the horizon, whether it's skiing an 8,000 meter peak or just anything, like what's your breaking down your planning process like? Like I know personally I get just as excited about pulling the gear out and staring at it as I do as taking it up the mountain.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get that excited about packing ski mountaineering gear because it is exhaustive and there's so many small things that you need that they need to be set up right. It's very technical. Yep. It's not like planning for a long run or a long day hike. It's like you got to make sure your bindings are adjusted to the right boots. Otherwise, like you could die, or that you want your edges sharp and just all these little details. And so because I do it so much, it's like not that exciting to me. It's a bit overwhelming, but I guess it's like right now with my ultramarathon training, it's like you break it down and you try to have like week by week goals. And there's certain things you have to have done a certain time out. Otherwise it's going to be too short, I guess. So just making sure I have like the big picture in view and I'm breaking it down into manageable chunks and weekly achievable, like, I don't know, making a tick list, I guess, and just ticking off those boxes.
I love that. And kind of touching back on one of the last things you said before, I think I struggle with this, and probably our listeners will struggle with this a lot too, is like, when do you let the scariness of a proposed objective back you down, or when do you just trust your intuition that you have it? I feel like that's such a weird balance to have, because a lot of times you're like, okay, I've put in the work, I know I have the knowledge about this sport or avalanches or whatever it is, depending on the person, but I'm also looking at this mountain or trail or whatever it is and thinking, I can't do this. Like,
when is it too much?
When is it too much? I struggle with that, and I think a lot of people do. And is it just you trust your gut? What is the ideal situation there?
Well, I had this similar kind of crippling anxiety before I skied Mount Rainier last summer, because my dad actually climbed Rainier, and then the guide that he climbed with fell into a crevasse and died. And so my parents, they both are like, did not want me to go on Mount Rainier. And they were like trying to talk me out of it. And so it's really hard to do something even as a full grown woman against your parents' wishes. But what I told myself is, I'm just going to go up and have a look and see how it goes. And if like it's not a cold enough night, or the snow hasn't refrozen enough, or the group dynamics aren't working, or if something feels off, I'll turn around. And that's the best you can do, is just sometimes getting started is the hardest part. And then once you're in it, it's either going to work or it's not. But a lot of times you'll have many, many places where you can turn around and back down. And so I think that just taking that first step and saying, I'll have a look and see how it goes, and just take it one step at a time.
I love that. I'll have a look.
Yeah,
I love that.
So
I'll go.
I've gone for Rainier 3 times and got the summit the first, but the next 2 I tried to split board it, and both times, like, one stopped at Muir and one stopped halfway up the Ingraham Glacier, and turned the team around both times. I mean, sometimes it really is just that. It's you have a look and the cards aren't there.
Totally, and that's totally fine too. And so just being okay to accept failure and not to be like the summit crazy person who's like, we have to keep going.
Right.
Because nobody likes that person. Like, when it's clear that, I've been that person before where I've, like, aggressively tried to peer pressure people into continuing, and it's not a good person to be. So, yeah.
See,
so it's good to try things and fail often. Like, I wish that I could go back in my life and try way more ambitious things and fail way more often and try to, like, let go of the perfectionist.
That's a great lesson.
That. Yeah, no, anyone listening right now, just try more, fail more, and you will succeed more.
Yeah. Or, like, I mean, again, I'm from Minnesota, so the Wayne Gretzky quote that says, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
There you go.
It's
Classic.
silly, but I tell myself that all the time because the fear of rejection, the fear of failure is so crippling. Like, there's so many of my friends that have, like, wanted to approach someone for sponsorship, but then they just couldn't do it because they were so afraid of failure. And so in that realm, like, I guess with sponsorships and approaching them, like, I've always been totally willing to get rejected. So I need to bring that more into my mountaineering, to just go have a look more and see how it goes.
Now, did you do anything, more creative, out of the norm to approach sponsors to get those yeses eventually?
Well, I had a really good mentor when I was younger who taught me a lot about the ins and outs of working with brands. And so she always taught me that it's not about you and what you're like. A lot of people approach it like, I'm the best at this, or I'm a world champion at that. But it's about what you can provide for brands. Like, it's about what you can give, not like who you are. And so just remembering that it's been really helpful to approach those sponsorships. Yeah. So that was just really good wisdom and advice.
That's solid.
Yeah.
So I know we're kind of nearing the end of our conversation, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about climbing the hill and getting involved and protect our winners and some of the environmental efforts that you're involved in Utah as well. So how did you get started in those? And maybe how would you recommend others can get started with some of those organizations?
Yeah, so my parents, like, again, I keep going back to my parents because they have been I'm kind of a traditional Midwestern girl in my upbringing. And so it's sort of hard for me to do things like so outside of the status quo and out of the societal norms. But one of the things that my parents both really wanted to push me to do was to pick a career that would have a positive impact on society. So when I was getting ready to graduate from college, I was really struggling deciding what to do. And I had a really amazing, my senior year, I had to take a prerequisite that I hadn't taken yet, American National Government. And I had an amazing teacher who asked the class, like, what kind of relationship do you want to have with government? Do you want it to be something where you only interact with government when you have to pay taxes or get a speeding ticket? Or do you want it to be a relationship where you proactively come to the table and use government as a tool for problem solving? And he really encouraged us to get involved politically. So after that semester, I did an internship for the governor's environmental advisor for the state of Utah. And I learned so much about everyday citizens using their voice to influence public policy. And so that formed the backdrop for all of the environmental work that I've done, is just being proactive and coming to the table to express my concerns and see about using government as a tool for problem solving. And yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful now to have the Climb the Hill event with the American Alpine Club and the Access Fund, where I can go to Washington, D.C. with all these other athletes and we can advocate for policy that will create more funding for outdoor recreation. And yeah, I'm also really grateful for the work I've done with Protect Our Winners. And then, I mean, a lot of it happens on the local level. And so Patagonia has this amazing new digital platform called ActionWorks, where you can get involved with your local nonprofits. And that's where we can make the biggest changes. And so, I mean, I would highly encourage, I know it can seem so daunting and overwhelming, and it's really easy to feel like there's no way to have an effect. But at the local level, your city council people are super approachable, and it's really easy to speak at these meetings. So I would highly encourage to go to that Patagonia ActionWorks site and find a local nonprofit about an environmental cause that you care about and try to make that first step. Even just sign up for their email alerts and just read the emails, because there's oftentimes tons of things that they need people to show up for. So I would just encourage you to take that first step, and it's way more fun and less daunting than you realize.
Yeah, I was just about to grab my phone. I was like, oh, I should do that right now. Oh, I forgot. I'm in an interview. I should probably still put a reminder for later. That's great.
How many of the times that like you're getting involved and you're going to these meetings or speaking, are you speaking to an empty room? Like how stark is the contrast of just like the opportunity to be involved that people aren't taking?
Well, actually, usually, I mean, a lot of the meetings that I've spoken at are like federal hearings about oil and gas or coal leasing, and a lot of times the rooms are totally filled with coal miners, like 500 coal miners that are bussed up. So I've usually they're
how do they receive you?
I mean, I've been booed, and I've not received like any applause, and one time I was called a liar, and I mean, I haven't been received very well, but I usually try to have some good conversations with people and talk to people one-on-one and to see like where we can find common ground, because I don't believe that I think we have way more in common than we realize. And so it's like, it can be a little bit stressful for sure, but I also have a really good network of friends that usually come with me, and having just one friend with you to like enjoy the process with you, it makes such a world of difference. So I would highly encourage you to like make sure you rope your friend into coming with you, because it just makes it so much better. But yeah, usually they're pretty packed meetings actually. Like I haven't really been to any that are empty.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So Action Works from Patagonia, get involved on your local level and bring a buddy system.
Yeah, the buddy system is a total game changer. Like it'll make those hours, like a lot of times you have to sit through a lot of hours of it's kind of time consuming, but it's totally worth it. And I think that what my parents did instill in me is a service oriented outlook of like, how can you serve the world? Because so many of us, especially in how we use our public lands, I think the relationship is a little one-sided, where we take more than we give back.
Right.
And we take the access, and we take the trails, and we take everything for granted. We never realize the thousands of hours that people had to go through to get those lands conserved or to get that toilet built. So it's like our civic duty to give back so the next generation has the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Rainier earlier. Every single time I get up to Camp Muir and see like the toilets there and the like the outhouses and the bunkhouse, and you're just exhausted after however many hours you're hauling all your gear up there, and just like thinking, man, now do I want to build one of those?
Definitely not.
Right?
Yeah. Maintaining that. Yeah.
It's crazy. And I mean, there's so many different ways that you can give back. Like you don't physically have to haul like bricks up to Camp Muir.
No.
Right,
It's just a matter of appreciating what other people have done for you, though.
Absolutely. It's so critical to be mindful of the conservation efforts of the generation before us, and to make sure that we're stepping up, because otherwise, like, there's gonna be problems. Like we're gonna lose it if we don't actively stand up for it, speak up.
Right.
So yeah, and it can actually be kind of fun. It's actually kind of addictive, and it can be really high adrenaline. So
okay, how do we gamify political action too, so we can get more people on apps and stuff? So
right, we've got Strava, Headspace, and what's the
Politic.
I guess it's
Well, we should come up with that. We'll talk about it offline.
That's such a good idea. That is so brilliant to get, like, you could collect trophies, and
That's what I'm saying, Caroline. I'll send you my resume. I'm just saying,
Okay, we have like $1 million idea, or maybe it's not $1 million, but it's we need to talk more. I like this for sure. This is the kind of creative problem solving we need to make it more sexy and trendy.
There you go.
There it is. It's happening. Set it first here. We will be working on this as soon as the recording ends.
Hot takes, yeah.
Awesome.
So one thing we're trying to ask all of our guests is, how do you define stoke?
What does that mean to you?
Well, I love that word, for starters, but I guess I would say that it's just it's a state of mind or an attitude that you can bring to whatever you're doing. I guess I think of it as like a passionate, childlike curiosity and wonder of how you move in the world.
Oh my gosh, that might have been the best one we've gotten.
You say that after every single person.
No, it keeps getting better and better. I'm just so impressed with all the answers we're getting. That was great.
I think that says something about the magic of the word and what it represents to our community. Is just like that every single person who defines it says the best thing ever.
Love it. So how can people continue watching your story and following along on your endeavors?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different platforms. I mean, I do like to use the Instagram and the Instagram stories. I'm also trying to update my blog more regularly, so you can follow that for more in-depth discussions. Or I have a lot of photos and whatnot on there, carolinegleich.com. And then I'm on Twitter and Facebook, so those are the main ones right now. Awesome. Yeah. Strava is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I do follow you on Strava, and that's really a big hit to my ego. So, I might.
So you're getting an unfollow from Emily.
Oh no.
No, but
I'm just kidding.
We'll put all those links in the description for this podcast as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and to inspire our audience here. And Emily's saying she wants to say one more. What's up? What's going on over here?
Sorry. Caroline, I know you are a big reader. Well, I see it from your social media. Is there any books that you're reading right now that you've read recently that we can recommend for our listeners who are trying to continue the stoke?
Ooh, there are quite a few. I mean, I'm also really into the podcasts, but I really enjoyed Invisibilia on the podcast side.
Okay.
Especially season 1. I found that really intriguing. And then I really liked the book The Power of Habit. I believe it's what it was called. And I can double check on these titles and get back to you. And then I read a really good one about running called the 80-20. And it's like about this training philosophy for running. That was really, really helpful.
Perfect.
So
love it.
Yeah. I'll try to come up with some all-time favorites and get back to you. I can't think of them all. I do a lot of audiobooks on my runs, so that's a good way to pass the miles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and anything that does come to mind for you that you would like to share, we'll just toss it in the show notes here for...
Okay, awesome. I will follow up with you on that.
Caroline's book and podcast rundown.
There you go.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks so much for listening in for our interview with Caroline. I am stoked. I want to go skiing, but also she's just like such a well-rounded athlete that I'm just stoked to hear her story, and she inspires me to just go crush it.
Yeah. You going to start skiing more?
You're cute. You're cute with your little jokes you make.
Oh, come on.
No, I will. I actually will. There's I have to start. But I follow Caroline on Strava. I would highly recommend, because it like motivates me to go running. If I see her, she's done a workout or something, I'm like, oh gosh, she did like 25 miles. I guess I can do this like 5-mile run.
Yep. Very, very much an inspirational person. Great to follow. And so for more from Caroline, I know we gave you her social channels, but check those out. And also for any of the show notes, be sure to go to exploreinspired.com/Stokecast. And you can find everything you need there from this episode and past episodes. And also, as always, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode.
All the future episodes.
All the episodes.
Mysterious.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Emily Holland.
And I'm Jonathan Ronzio. We'll catch you next week with another episode of the Stokecast.